Tēnā tātou katoa. Ko toko ingoa, ko Kirsty taku wahine puma kiua whitu rangitia. Tokarua Mao Tamariki, ko Sammy rua ko Trevor. Ke te Papioea anoa ana. Ko Aote Kaitiaki whari puka puka ke te Papioea. He ana te mea nui o te ao. Kia o nei, he puka puka, he puka puka, he puka puka. Nō reira, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you, Ruki, for that beautiful karakia, that opening. I apologise for my stumbling delivery. Thank you, Rachel, for that lovely welcome as well. And thank you, gorgeous people, for being here on such a horrible night. I hope we will leave with warm hearts and they will keep us warm as we get to where we need to be. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, it's an absolute honour to stand here before you today as I come to the end of my term as Tawhirito, New Zealand Reading Ambassador. My journey across this beautiful country promoting the importance of reading and advocating the need to support and inspire young people to read for pleasure, this journey has been an unparalleled joy. I have too much to say as I've seen and heard and experienced so much in the almost 2 years I've been visiting schools, libraries, communities. I've talked not only about the pleasure of reading and the joy and importance of books, but the power of words on a page that can transport us out of or above any situation. Whether your situation is due to socioeconomics or chance, direction or desperation, joy or sorrow, need or want, reading can be that sanctuary or that escape. Every child deserves to discover the joy and power of reading, regardless of the circumstance of where they live. I'm just going to do a quick disclaimer. The people that have seen me present and talk before, a podium is not my friend. I'm normally out the front chatting away, but the gravity of this pānui and this speech, I am reading my speech from the podium. I will ask you a question at the end potentially, so I apologise if I'm not out the front. This is where I need to be this evening. I want to start by thanking the Tupuna Mataranga o Aotearoa, the National Library, for the opportunity to do what I love, and that's everyone there. Elizabeth, Kate, Joe, Mel, all of the facilitators, you wonderful bunch, and the Tawhirito partners. Tupuna Foundation are instrumental in getting us to where we are. Our partners, Read NZ, Storylines, Creative New Zealand. And I want to acknowledge everyone that's crossed my path and enabled me and given me the fuel for this journey. That's the lovely partners there. That's one of our, there's the handover from Ben. So thank you all, I will be forever grateful. I want to thank my friends. I'm stoked that many are here today. I owe you all so much. You've given me time, you've given me strength, you've given me belief, and I've grown, not just in the last 2 years, but the last 8 years and beyond. To Trevor and Sammy, my two wonderful children who chose not to be here because they've heard me speak so many times before, I love you so much. Thank you for letting me be an absent dad a bit over the last couple of years. But well, we've done a lot, and I think Mum will be proud. I make no apologies for how often I will get emotional during my wee speech. I love what I do. Te Awhirito, New Zealand Reading Ambassador. It still brings me great joy when I say it. Of course, I'm number 2. Ben Brown was number 1. Poet, author, from Littleton, a very humble, intelligent wordsmith. Ben was the OG, who despite the turmoil of COVID shared his passion for storytelling far and wide. Ben said this in his pānui. The first version of ourselves was built on stories we were told by those we depended on for everything. If we were lucky, they understood that a narrative tapestry, rich in content, woven around us every day would instill a sense of place and belonging. At the same time, they'd challenge us gently with newness and mystery, extending our world by extending our narrative, building our story by the simple application and wonderful utility of words, of language, of discourse, and dialogue and exposition. If you started here, you are indeed home, because these things were the bricks that built your house of well-being and imagination. Ben is such a powerful orator, and I made the foolish error of watching his pānui while I was preparing for mine. So thank you, Ben, and I hope he's watching this. If you go to the Tawhirito website, it says this, which Rachel has touched on. Tawhirito, New Zealand Reading Ambassador, advocates and champions for the importance of reading in the lives of young New Zealanders, their family, whānau and communities. As national reading role model, they build visibility and awareness of reading across all sectors of Aotearoa New Zealand, helping us create a nation of readers. Across time, each tawhirito will bring their own strength to the role. I was incredibly glad that the job description contained that last part. Bring your own strengths to the role. I must also be honest, when I received the phone call from the lovely Elizabeth Jones, I had a momentary flash of panic. You see, I'd spent the previous few hours absolutely doing my head in because Elizabeth had rung, as she does, and left a hurried phone message. "Oh, Alan, I really need to speak to you, but I'll jump on a plane. Talk to you in a few hours. Bye." Now, I assumed she might want me to do a talk. I judged the book awards, I'd spoken to conferences, and then I remembered the Tawhirito nominations had just finished. Q tabs opening in my brain at an amazingly alarming rate. Mind blown and blowing up. I needed to calm myself, so I messaged my librarian partner in crime, Sasha Eastwood, and explained the situation. We chatted and dreamed about what good could be done if indeed I had the opportunity. And I want to thank Sash for being a great librarian, but even better cheerleader and friend. Elizabeth rang and asked if I would consider to be the next Tawhirito. I of course accepted immediately, thanking her for the honour even if it was suddenly daunting. But I reminded myself I'd taken my Pinnins Intermediate Lit Quiz team to the World Finals in Singapore after winning the national finals at our school's 11th attempt. That wondrous team of girls came second in the world, or as I prefer to say, they were the number one all-girls team in the world. I judged New Zealand Children and Young Persons Book Awards, was convener of judges the following year. I've been working with young people in libraries for 25 years. I told myself I know my stuff and I'm damn good at what I do. I realise some people here, or listening at home, hello, may know me and know my library work, but a lot of you may not know how I got here, or be aware of how I've tried to bring this wonderful role to life. That's 13-year-old me. I often tell people I'm here because I failed. I befriended failure at an early age, even though I liked school, especially when dealing with words. My brain would wander all too easily. Having me in a classroom would have been akin to having a Labrador in situ. Friendly, fun to have around, lots of energy, but absolutely no focus. As soon as a teacher started talking, I'd take the first thread and follow it to see where it went. I remember one thread clearly. The teacher said, "Today we're talking about Africa. What do we know about Africa?" Instantly my brain screamed, "Camels!" And my brain went like this. I know camels have one or two humps, and when you ride a camel with one hump, do you ride on top of the hump or do you ride behind the hump? And camels can blow a huge bubble out the side of their mouths. I wonder what would happen if you gave a camel bubble gum. What if they blew a giant bubble that was so big they took off into the air? And then what if a jumbo jet flew into it and the bubble gum and the camel got all over the windscreen? What would they say on the news? What was the question, sir? If I was in school today, words like ADHD and neurodivergence might have been thrown around. But there's one thing that slowed my brain down and allowed it to focus. Reading. Give me a book and everything else in my head would be silenced. I would direct the movie. I would play the parts. I would be the hero. It's about the power of reading. As a kid, I struggled to make friends, but books became my companions. I'd escape into their worlds, playing out the stories in my head. It's like movies. I loved Willard Price, Wilbur Smith, and adventure stories where the hero set off on grand journeys. Even today, I enjoy Jack Reacher and the like. I still love the hero complex I never quite connected to as a kid. They were there, the books, when I needed them. They made me feel smart instead of stupid. They strengthened me rather than hurt me, and there were thousands of them, just ready and waiting whenever I was. But I, like other children, didn't just suddenly love books. I had access to wonderful books, time to choose what to read, and time to read. And had stories read and told to me, and I had reading role models. Because childhood reading role models are incredibly important. I was lucky enough to spend many summer holidays at Woodend Beach, just outside of Christchurch. And I was incredibly lucky that Ernest Charles Mawson was my grandfather. He was a reader. He was a smart, funny man. He introduced me to Words, Crosswords, The Goon Show, Dave Allen, Spike Milligan, and we would read for hours. He is one of the reasons I'm in love with words to this day. Sitting on that sun-soaked porch on Woodend Beach, alongside Pop reading in blissful, companionable silence, were the first building blocks of the library mind I have created. Now, Pop didn't have many children's books in his house, but he had a bookshelf that went along his hallway and it was filled with Reader's Digest condensed books. And I love that because every place I've gone, there's been one teacher or someone in the back of the room that giggles and smiles. So I love that shared memory that we have, those 3 grown-up books condensed into one. I didn't understand a lot what was going on, but it was amazing. After we had our fill of reading, Pop would tell me stories. He was a navigator on fighter bombers in World War II. And those stories were enough to fire my brain out of those stories. The frivolousness of Biggles after I'd listened to Pop tell me about being shot at and bombed and things like that. And so I started reading non-fiction, shunning Biggles, reading real-life accounts of the very crews Pop had flown with and finding pictures of him and his crew. It was amazing. So I researched a lot of things. I got into non-fiction. And by the time I wanted to get back into fiction, I wanted to step into that adult world. I went from Willard Price to Wilbur Smith. When I was a teenager, Stephen King. You're a teenager. You've got to start a bit darker. But beyond escapism, books honed my imagination. Reading fantasy allowed me to visualise entire worlds in my mind, making the experience uniquely my own. Half Men of O by Morris G. Roald Dahl stories, even choose your own adventure books. They show me that kids can be heroes. And they taught me that when you read, you are in control. The author provides the cues, but you direct that story in your own mind. When I was younger, books were a doorway. Books about daring do, strong boys or men that went out and did the thing. Willard Price Adventures became Wilbur Smith, then Jack Reacher. They were who I wasn't. Books have always filled my mind and heart. Luckily, as an adult, I realised how powerful children's and young persons' literature can be. Harry Potter, Terry Pratchett, A Phantom Tollbooth, A Monster Calls. I came to realise that these and other books were mirrors too. Harry showed us, even with loss, you look for the light. Milo didn't get school, but he came to see the power of words. A Monster Calls is a book that pulled me apart and put me back together all at the same time. Sir Terry taught me the Sams, Vimes, boot theory, and that orangutans make the best librarians. That's why I advocate so strongly for young people to read for pleasure. Reading develops the brain, imagination, and self-image, and libraries and educators need to meet kids where they are, giving them the books that reflect their identities, languages, and interests. I reread Terry Pratchett's Discworld series every year and always find something new. I've never read the same book twice, and no one ever reads the same book. Every time a child reads a book, it's a new experience, a new way to process information or make sense of the world. So I went to Teachers College with grand dreams of educating the next generation, probably influenced by Dead Poets Society or some other inspiring movie that I had watched. But I struggled. Revisited by my old friend failure, my scattered brain didn't quite align with the structure of study. I'd already been working with kids and didn't like what I saw in the education system, and by my own admission, I failed. But failure can be a great teacher. The lessons learned can be powerful if you learn from them and perhaps turn them into luck. So luckily, and yes, I am a very lucky person. I found work as a special needs teacher aide at a school called Monrad Intermediate in Palmerston North. And that's where I truly fell in love with children and books. I was fortunate because that was the year Harry Potter came out. And suddenly I had a book to use as leverage with the kids. I built up that library, tried Teachers College again, failed again, bounced around jobs, got married, had children, then luck struck again, and I found myself at Palmerston North City Council City Library's youth space, a youth development space, and later I moved from an intermediate to Pinnins. But youth space allowed me to connect with that generation that is perhaps most maligned when it comes to connecting with books and reading. We know the teens, the young people, their brains are changing along with their priorities. So I listened and I learned. And then Pinnins allowed me again to mould an intermediate library. But with my youth space experiences, I knew that to create readers first, adopting reading as a habit was crucial for them not to fall off the wagon as they entered those teenage years. On my library journey, I discovered the power of books, how they are mirrors or doorways, how they could reflect people using them or allow them to escape. That became my mantra. As I read more, I realised how much the library world had evolved. When I was young, books were generic, lacked diversity. Now kids can, usually, see themselves in books and escape into worlds I couldn't have dreamed of, even with my powerful Labrador brain. Knowing how powerful reading can be in the lives of young people, it's somewhat upsetting to me that we're in a world where reading engagement is in decline and literacy rates in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is an issue. And it seems at present that it's about the instruction of reading, not highlighting the benefits. I know we're in a time when New Zealand authors and illustrators are at their strongest. The material, the treats are there. How do we get them to the feast? So as a librarian and as Tawhiti Rito Reading Ambassador, I've been advocating for encouraging and supporting children and young people to read for pleasure, to establish or re-establish the habit in the case of young people and adults. I know there's a market for reading self-help books to tell you what sea creature you might be, or learn how to Marie Kondo up a storm, telling you only have 30 books on your bookshelf. And of course, we cannot go past the massive market that is spicy fiction has become. Of course, you can't beat a good old Mills and Boon. Don't judge me. You can, of course, read what brings you joy, but we must be keeping an eye on what is moving our younger readers. In a perfect world, the reading habit is one that we both get into at home and, more importantly, at school. Because reading for instruction and reading for indulgence are two different things. Reading for pleasure is an independent and social practice. It complements reading programs in schools and is the heart of any school reading culture. In her report, How Teachers Who Read Create Readers, researcher Sue McDowell writes, reading for pleasure counts as learning. There's so much research that shows children who read for pleasure have all sorts of better life outcomes, including achievement. Reading is meant to be a joyful, purposeful, exciting experience, and learning skills is important, so you can have those experiences. It's not an end in itself. Reading for pleasure is something now that is kind of seen as a reward, especially for us grown-ups. Curling up with a book in a quiet spot with snackage or a tasty beverage, we almost see it as if it should be a rarity. Instead, it should be a habit. Something done regularly, even if it's done at a set time so you know you will do it. Author Kate DiCamillo says, reading should not be presented to children as a chore or a duty. It should be offered to them as a precious gift. I want to remind people of the great and profound joy that can be found in stories, and that stories can connect us to each other, and that reading together changes everyone involved. So we know reading is important. The question for me always has been, how do we show a new generation of readers that joy of reading? This is sometimes a bit of a struggle in a country like Aotearoa, New Zealand. We're an outdoors country, an active nation full of can-do, number 8 wire, she'll be right thinking, worshipping idols like Hillary, McCaw, Carrington, Apirata, Hillary's sense of exploration, Richie's skill at the breakdown, Willie Apeyarda's bravery on the battlefield, and Lisa Carrington's shoulders. They are without doubt New Zealand role models and absolutely deserve all the kudos. I've spoken to over 15,000 people on my journey so far, mostly students, as Tawhiti Rito at schools, conferences and events, and one of the first questions I've always asked a group that I'm speaking to, can you name some famous New Zealanders? Hands go up. Sir Edmund Hillary and Richie McCaw are the two names that were uttered at every event. New Zealand authors and illustrators? Not so much. I love my sport, don't get me wrong. I love that about us Kiwis, we punch well above our population, but it also saddens me in a way because it's taken so long for the sheer awesomeness of our authors and illustrators to get some of that adulation we shower on our sports people and politicians. Ticked. Imagine if our libraries became as popular as those rugby sidelines. Our bookstores visit as regularly as sports shops. Our children's bedroom walls adorned with book posters up next to Ari Savia and Ruby Tui, who has an awesome autobiography, straight up, got to read it. So out of the 15,000 people in over 80 schools, how many times was a New Zealand author or illustrator called out? Hands up if you think more than 500. Hands up if you think more than 200. Hands up more than 100. More than 50. How about 14? As of Nelson, February 2025. Ball, Mahi, Cowley, Hunt, Hill, Judah, Beale. New Zealand has a unique cultural and national context that needs to be considered when contemplating how to engage our nation in reading. Reading is sometimes seen as that inactive pursuit, and who as a child in the holidays or weekend was told, get your nose out of that book, get outside and get some fresh air. This was my childhood. I would take my friends, my books, and read all day long if I could. I was hiding in those pages, struggling to make friends or a friend group that would fit. My mother was ill for a lot of my childhood before she passed away when I was 15, so those books were an escape. To be told to come back to reality and go outside because what I did for joy wasn't seen as a normal, worthwhile pastime was a hard thing to fathom. So part of the challenge is breaking the stereotype of reading for pleasure, being a solitary or an active pursuit. For many children, young people and adults, reading is a very social activity. There's a reason kids love to talk about what they're reading and hear stories read aloud, and why book clubs are so popular. But there are also other barriers to reading. Obviously screens, social media, They can all be wonderful things, and believe me, I have every streaming service under the sun. But kids have so much information coming at them. They're stimulated in so many ways. Screens and digital world is compelling, and it's designed to be so. My sessions. I love that. Sorry, that was such a good time. I believe in the power of books and words. So what I did is I stood in front of these children and young people, these teachers, school leaders, librarians, these families, communities, and I tell them my story, how I became a reader, the importance of reading, role models, and how lucky I was to have a pop. I read to them loudly and with joy. I tell them how to set a reading trap in their house. What you do is you find a picture book you like. You sit where someone can hear you or see you, and you read it loudly with joy. You laugh when there's something to laugh at. You gasp when there's something to gasp at. You go ooh when there's some kissy or something. Then when you finish, you loudly close that book and say, wow, that was awesome. You leave it on your seat and you leave the room. You have laid a reading trap for that person. And they love that idea. I ask them for their advice. I tell them I have a library. It's full of shelves, but I have no books. I have a great budget. I can buy whatever I want. I know, wishful thinking librarians. But I say to them, I'm a 50-year-old Pākehā man. What do I know about what young people want to read? Secretly knowing, of course, I know a heck of a lot about what they want to read. I ask them what a library should look like, what books should be on the shelves, and let them know that they should be in control of what is on offer. I say to them, when you're young, you get very little choice over things. You're told where to go, what to do, what to say, what to wear. Books and libraries are things that you have choice and control over. What an amazing thing to be told. The library needs to always reflect the reader and the community. And it's important that children have help finding the right book at the right time. In those early days at Monrad, the kids came from low socioeconomic backgrounds and they weren't readers. The magic happened when I put the right book in the right hands, when a child laughed at something in the book for the first time or turned a page with that genuine excitement. Some kids try to find ways to avoid reading, but once they find that one book that resonates, they're hooked. Finding the right book means asking questions. What do you like? What are your hobbies? Do you game? What was the last book you read? A reluctant reader who loves gaming might enjoy reading Player One, for example. It's about making a connection first and using the books to deepen it. For a long time, there's a stereotypical approach to book recommendations. Boys got action books, girls got romance. But kids don't fit into those neat boxes. Many of the boys in my high school library at Freiburg actually love the romance books and the girls crave the adventures. Publishing has finally caught up, producing stories that reflect those diverse identities. When children read what they enjoy, they are more likely to develop a positive attitude towards reading. Whether it's comic books, fantasy novels, information about their favourite animals, the key is to help them find books they enjoy and they are engaged, interested, and exercise and growing that reading muscle. Research shows children who can choose their reading material are more enthusiastic and motivated readers. That's what Sue had said. My most recent tour was to Nelson. One of my favourite parts of my school visits are if I have time to visit the school library, to see the kids in their natural habitat. Luckily at Nayland College, interval was directly after my presentation. So I retired to the library after telling the crowd that anyone was welcome to come and have a chat. I was surrounded by a lovely group of passionate readers, all waiting their turn to tell me what books were their current or long-time favourites. I believe part of their joy and enthusiasm in chatting to me was they had found another book lover to talk to. Not a teacher, not a grown-up, just a fellow explorer of books. And that's what's worked well for me on my journey. Asking young people what they're passionate about and then listening and validating those interests. But a school visit isn't just about inspiring students. It's about engaging educators and families too. If a child walks into a library after I leave excited to read, I've done my job. But it has to go beyond that. Schools need to foster that excitement. If a child is fired up about books but isn't supported by their teachers, parents, or librarians, that enthusiasm will soon fizzle out. Reading needs to be reinforced in the classroom, in the library, and at home. Sorry, time check. Parents, teachers, librarians all play a role in making reading a priority. Kids need reading role models, adults that read and talk about books. A child who sees their teacher or parent reading is more likely to pick up a book themselves. Even if the parents aren't big readers, they can encourage reading by letting their kids take the lead, visiting libraries, choosing books together, or simply reading aloud. And by building a relationship with the kids, they connect that child and their interest and opens doors to the joy and connection books and reading provides. At the start of my sessions, I also ask, who here likes reading and reads on a regular basis? Not many hands go up. So then I say, okay, be brave. Put your hand up if you're not a regular reader and haven't found your reading journey yet. Of course, more hands go up. And I tell them it's just that someone may have tried to help but couldn't find the right book at the right time. So I see that as part of my job, helping teachers and educators who are trying their best to tick the ever-growing number of boxes and just give them another tool to wield. The great thing I started to notice that when I asked them about what books should be in a young person's library and what were their favourites, the ones that started them down their reading road, the ones that might still be in their heads or in their hearts. And be warned, dear listeners, I'll be asking you to ponder that question yourself. They enthusiastically put their hands up to offer me titles. The ones that said they weren't readers always put their hand up. They still had a book when you asked them directly. And that was the great thing about it. And I would always run out of time in those sessions. At the end of the session, I was always surrounded by a group of kids who hadn't been able to get their hand up in time and tell me a book. And I always tried to find time and listened to every book they had. And I prided myself on being able to fire back a line or two about that book. And if I didn't know the name of the book, I would be amazed and excited and joyful that I was learning a new book. So they felt important that they were educating me. And there was a really powerful moment in one of the Nelson schools. A young girl, she put her hand up very straight, and she answered in that very deliberate way that only the neurodivergent can. And she told me, when I asked to suggest a book, I don't have a book suggestion, but I am writing a book. Hand down. And I was just like, I said, wow, that's amazing. And as the group afterwards were telling me their books, she waited just outside of the group, eyes poking out from under her fringe. So I detangled myself from the pack, shooed them towards the door and turned to her. She nervously told me she was writing her book. It wasn't her first, but she thinks it's her best. I told her what an amazing thing to do and how in awe I was because I have an idea for a book, but I'm too scared to write it. She looked at me and said, I think it's hard until you just start. I thanked her. Then a burst of energy exploded into the room. There you are! This was her best friend. He was obviously the storm to her calm. I help her write the books. I give her heaps of ideas. She smiled and headed out the door, him bounding behind her just like a Labrador. They want to share those little joys with someone passionate about something that's important to them. And by commenting or describing on every book they call out, they know it has value. They know they've been heard, and I'm proud of that skill. Children's author SF said, that book Tiger, it's gorgeous. If you want children to read, let them read what they love. I think we have to help every child find the things that will make them readers, even if we as adults can't always see the value in those things. When I ask kids what they like to read, I always try to share their excitement, even if the book or author they mention is not one that I personally love, because I know their excitement would lead them on to other books and authors, whereas dismissing their choices might crush their identities as readers, putting an end to their reading altogether. And to engage this nation of readers, once we've figured out the access, we need to let them have as much choice and scope and agency over their reading choices. They must be able to pick the book about the pony, the football player, the wizard, the bum, the brain, the heart. They must feel as though they have control over their reading journey, which means we must be prepared. We must know what's out there, what's hot, what's not, what's a classic, old and new. We must shelve personal taste, our own bias and preconceived notions of what makes a book a worthy choice. We must take care not to backseat drivers on their reading journeys. It's important for children to feel they can return to their favourite authors and books, which is sometimes a safety net, comforting, enjoyable. I talk a lot in my visits about judging a book by its cover. I'll tell them, I'll let you in on a secret. That saying applies to people. Never judge someone by their appearance. You judge them on their character and how they treat you. But you can judge a book by its cover. If an author, an illustrator, a publisher has not put effort into the cover or the blurb, why should you read their book? If it doesn't interest you, put it down and pick up another one. The example I use for this is a book called The Day My Bum Went Psycho. I discovered this on one of my first days in that library at Monrad. I'd agreed to take over the school library, but I realised I hadn't read a children's book in 10 years. So the day before I was going to open it, I thought, right, I'm going to judge a book by its cover. And I went in and looked at the first display, the last librarian on the left, and there on the top shelf, all on its own, as if the light had come through the window like Indiana Jones, was a book with a bum on the cover. Now, children today have got is it Dawn McMillan's picture books? I've lost my bum, I need a new bum. Dogs have lost a bum, Captain Underpants. It's normal for them. For me, giggling, early 2000s, there was a bum on the cover, and the title, The Day My Bum Went Psycho. I thought, yep, here's my start, here's my journey. Again, I got lucky. That was the first book I started on my journey of what to put in my library for kids. And I still remember the blurb. Zach woke up. There, standing on his windowsill, silhouetted in the moonlight, was his bum. It turned and looked at him, and then it jumped out into the night. Zach sat up and said, "Oh no, not again." And I say to the kids, what questions does that fire up in here? Oh, and it's always logistics. His bum comes off, how does he do? I said, yeah, he can't sit up, he'd fall over. Yeah, but how does he poo? I said, oh, that's a good question, that's great. Oh, well, not again, where's it going? And I said, that's what a good blurb does. Fires off questions in your head and makes you want to read the book. Now, I don't consider myself very well read in the adult side of things. I love my reading. For children's and young persons, that's where my enjoyment is. And you've got to imagine reading as a ladder. Each rung represents a different level of reading complexity, comprehension, and enjoyment. And as with the physical ladder, it's important that children climb at their own pace. Some may be eager to move up quickly, others may prefer to spend more time on a particular rung. Instead of rushing them up that ladder, moving them off that rung if we don't know what they're reading, widen the rung. Children and adults' reading preferences can be incredibly diverse. Different genres and formats offer various benefits from improving vocabulary and enhancing creativity. Graphic novels, for example, are slowly but surely shrugging off the inherited negative stereotype that they aren't real books. Studies have proven that graphic novels have more complex words than novels on average, largely due to their limited space, so they value the word more. And they're a great way to encourage reluctant students and help them develop a love for storytelling, encouraging children to explore different types of books without pressuring them to conform to a specific standard can lead to richer and more fulfilling reading experiences. I challenge parents and educators alike to read what they are reading, walk a mile in their Crocs. It might include reading together, discussing books, providing a wide range of material by showing interest in what they're reading, helping them find what they enjoy, valuing their choices. You help them develop that genuine love of reading. Librarians, teachers, educators must make that effort to read and to know what is out there. Sometimes you have to bait the hook to draw them in, to get them started. Then you can be ready to champion a range of books, but you must be prepared. A lot of the work at National Library, Storylines, Read NZ is to encourage teachers to be read widely. They understand librarians are vital and teachers need to be empowered to read more and find out about books too. Especially as so many schools don't have libraries, school and public librarians are, or at least need to be, prepared to make these recommendations. Ready to deal with whatever the reader needs in that moment, where it's dragons or horses, science or fantasy, bring them through the door and ask the librarian, do you have any suggestions? I believe you can tell a good librarian at that moment. Either their face will set into a mask of terror, or it'll be lit from within with joyous wonder as book after book cascades across their inner catalogue. And they'll ask something like, what do you like? What do you like to read? These superheroes of the shelves are there because they know books are the kryptonite to ignorance. Their books give you an X-ray vision into other worlds, that they allow you to fly, to soar, that they protect you from the bullets life can throw at you. I salute my fellow librarians. May the odds ever be in your favour. I realise I'm biased, of course. But if you've seen what I've seen as I've visited schools and communities around this country, you would have seen knowledge, resilience, joy, and unyielding resolve to keep putting books in the hands of any child lucky enough to walk through those doors. Of course, I'm not saying that libraries and librarians are going to be the only saviours in this decline in reading engagement. Of course, we could be if we had the time, money, and space. But they are such an important piece of the puzzle. So, we've established I was lucky. I had a reading role model. I had a library both in town and at my school. Anderson Park Primary had 6 kids. It was in the Bronx of Havelock North. People don't talk about it. It's been mowed down since. But this was the early 80s and a school library was just something you had. It was a no-brainer. Sadly, not the case today. So many New Zealand schools do not have a functioning library with an experienced, passionate, qualified librarian in place. And in some communities, there is very limited access to any other sources. And we wonder why literacy rates are consistently dropping. I tell you that in most cases, this is not the want of the schools or the communities, as educators know the value in having that safe space within their school, which is purely for students. Budget, space, time, you name it, they are up against it. It's about ensuring kids have something to read, no matter what their circumstances. In my role as Tawhiri Rito, I can happily say that I've been to almost every corner of our beautiful country. I've been to the very high decile, very well-resourced, large urban schools with beautifully renovated libraries, and I've been to single-class rural schools. In those communities, the concept of a library is a bit foreign, sometimes the closest being hundreds of kilometres away, therefore inaccessible. Access to literacy is a fundamental right. It should be available to all regardless of background or circumstance. During my travels, I've encountered communities where access to books and literacy resources are limited. I'm lucky to be part of some of the programs that are trying to change this, to find new ways to connect communities to books and reading. The National Library's Puto Rito Communities of Readers program was one of the beautiful plans to create the conditions to ensure access and opportunity. These are built on long-established work by services to schools who broaden these community connections in so many ways. There were 6 co-designed community projects that increased access to wide variety and diversity of books, including those in te reo Māori and languages spoken at home in each community. They supported and introduced reading role models, normalised books and reading and connected communities to existing services provided by schools and libraries. I visited Dargaville during the project there, which was a partnership between Kaipara Libraries, local primary schools and the National Library. I ate at a fantastic sandwich shop, and I watched as punters browse books from the pop-up library books, which were stationed in shops all around town. I went to South Dunedin and revelled in the splendidly widespread ripples from the community readers of project there. On another visit to Northland, my driver, the lovely Anne Dixon, I spent our days travelling out to an isolated rural area, and I visited 2 single-class schools, and I saw the difference that passionate staff and whānau, along with connection from programs like Community Readers, can have. One of the schools, Kaihu Valley School, was obviously a community, almost family-led affair, as Auntie met us at the desk, told her niece who had organised the trip was away, waved at uncle who was on the mower on the lawn, and we headed to the class where the reliever was a local ex-teacher who helped when needed. There were 9 students in that class, 2 with severe learning difficulties, and they all beamed at the prospect of someone coming to share books with them. So I read to them for 45 minutes. My usual chat and banter would have been lost on them. So we all sat together on the mat and shared books I had bought, but also the books they had in their class due to that project. Connecting with a school like that is humbling. The realities of an isolated community doing what they need to do to provide the best for their tamariki. Then an hour later, in the other direction, was another single-class, single-teacher school, Tango Wahine. But this was obviously in a different socio-economic area. The school was spit, polished, shiny. We were shown to their bright, busy library, and the students made me sit down and read to me. Felt like a different world from the last school, but the passion and joy for the sharing of stories was the same. In Dunedin, I saw the impacts the National Library facilitators who've been part of the Community Readers Project have had on the schools, as every librarian met them with enthusiasm and joy, and gushed to me about how they've been able to promote their libraries to their communities in ways that hadn't been possible before. Tairi College told us they'd scheduled a chat with 200 students, but then the English teachers begged to be part of it, filled the auditorium, and we had 450, because they knew the value of the students hearing the message. And this work continues, bringing together communities and providing access to new projects, new resources, and promoting that love of reading, no matter what the background or community. I said earlier that reading has to be a habit, a learned behaviour, and the only way that happens is if they have from day one access to words, books, and again, reading role models. So habits again are where we start. Imagine prioritising reading as a family in your house or at school, where everyone stops what they are doing, grabs their book and sits down to read for 30 minutes or allows themselves to be read to. DEAR or SSR in the home, as you would say. Benefits of this would no doubt be many, but the most crucial one would be that your children, your family would see you reading. You would be modelling the habit, showing them that you too can get lost in a book. Reading aloud is one of the most important things you can do for your children as emerging readers. And I might just read aloud for you a little bit later. I mentioned earlier that reading doesn't just happen, and I mentioned the word access. We must also advocate and champion for the importance of cultural representation in literature that reflects the schools and communities across Aotearoa. All cultures, stories and voices must be reflected in the books we provide. It's essential for children to see themselves in the stories they encounter, to feel a sense of belonging and pride in their identity. Promoting diverse and inclusive literature is a key part of this mission, and we should be committed to amplifying the voices of our Māori and Pacifica communities, as well as all other underrepresented groups. Our school communities are looking so different to what they did 20 years ago. It's been slow, but trends are changing. Demand for te reo and dyslexia-friendly content is skyrocketing. Publishers are listening and adding a more diverse range of authors and illustrators. Even the covers are becoming more vibrant and eye-catching, especially, I'm proud to say, on the New Zealand authored books. This is so important for growing that generation of reading role models, for them to be able to see themselves, their whānau, their community in these titles. They deserve these mirror books. So the mahi is happening all over. And then there's me. I'm going to ask you, dear listeners, to think on something I mentioned earlier. What book started you on your reading journey? What book might still be in your head or in your heart? I'll ask you to share that at the end. Reflecting on ourselves as readers and our own reading journey reminds us of the importance of what books and reading means to us. This can then help us connect with how we might encourage our children to take up a journey into these pages. As I mentioned earlier, this generation has more distractions and information than any previous generation before them. Social medias, screen, and now AI. However, it's not just that. I think we're expected to be more emotionally connected than we were ever expected to be. We didn't talk openly about our emotions, didn't talk about bullying, anxiety, depression, whereas today these are all topics regularly broached with young people. You can't make sense of a world that's not shown to you. How can you value or understand your place if it's not reflected truthfully? And that's where I know books and reading are so vitally important. Imagine a child, or an adult to be honest, not knowing how to express something, but then being given a book that they can see themselves or their problem in. I'm a fan of the concept of what I call prescription pad literature, giving the reader a book that addresses a need that the reader may or may not know that they have. It's something I've taken as a huge part of my library work, purely because it became a large part of my life too. When my wife Kirsty passed away in 2017, a good friend gave me a book called The Fix-It Dad, and I was told now was the time to walk my talk. I've been prescribing books to people for a long time. Now it was my turn to receive those gifts. As I've said before, I'm very lucky. I'm going to read you the book that's become a prescription pad literature book of late favourite for me. In today's world, anxiety and depression is more commonplace than ever, and not just in the young people of today. The New Zealand author, Mel Simanek, has given me permission to read it, and I thank her publishers as well. And she gave me permission to read it and share a little about how it came to be. Basically, Mel said she woke up one day and it felt like there was an elephant sitting on her chest. My Elephant is Blue, by Melinda Simanek, illustrations by Vasanti Umbu. One morning I woke to find an elephant sitting on my chest. I found it hard to get up or move around or breathe or talk. I'm Blue, the elephant said. Can you please move, Blue? I asked. I don't want to move. This is a good spot for me to sit. You're crushing me, I said. Yet I find you very comfortable, said Blue. Mum and Dad were worried. They said, perhaps if you cheered up a bit or smiled at it. But it's hard to cheer up a smile when there's an elephant sitting on your chest. My brother said, wow, that's different. I said, I don't want to be different, at least not like this. Maybe if I helped you push, my sister said. She leaned against Blue, and while I shoved, even together we weren't strong enough. It's an elephant, I said. It's an elephant, Mum and Dad said. Surely it can't stay forever. It's bound to move on sometime. I hope sometime was soon. Mum took out every book on elephants out of the library and started reading. Dad rang an elephant specialist that someone had recommended. It might help if you ate something, Mum said. I'm not hungry. It was true. Not even for chocolate, said Mum. I thought about this and shook my head. Not even for chocolate. I'll keep it here until you're hungry, she said. Dad said, exercise and fresh air never hurt. I was tired of staying around the house all the time. I wanted to go for a walk, but it's impossible to walk with an elephant on your chest. I want to go for a walk, I I said to Blue. Can you move? Blue said, turning her back on me. Was she crying? Would you like to come for a walk with me? I said. We can go together. Blue helped me by putting 2 feet on the ground. We managed to walk around the block. That walk was nice, Blue said the next day. Would you like to go on another one? I asked. Maybe. This time we walked around the block in the other direction. Some people said hello to us and smiled. We both smiled back. Would have been rude not to. The next day Dad said, let's all go for a walk. As I put on my shoes, I asked Blue, are you hungry? No, said Blue. At least not yet. Mum's packing a picnic. What are your favourite things to eat? We went to the park because elephants like to eat grass and bark. We had sandwiches and pie and the chocolate Mum had saved and some grapes and some apples which Blue and I shared. Blue put all 4 feet on the ground to reach the grass. She munched for ages, then we lay down side by side. The sun shone and fresh air blew gently on our faces. I felt lighter than I had in a long time. My sister and I played roly-poly while Blue watched. Then all of us played football. On the way home, Blue walked beside me, and I held her trunk in my hand. I noticed something had changed. Blue, I said, you're turning pink. That's because I don't feel so blue anymore, she said. Blue still lives with us. I take her for walks and we share our favourite things to keep her in the pink, although sometimes she is blue again. I've discovered she has other colours. Yellow is the one I like best. And trying to get an idea of anxiety, depression in today's world across to kids can be a really hard thing. But that's the power of books. As my time in this role comes to an end, I hope that the next Tawhiri Rito can build on the momentum I believe we've all created. To continue spreading the message of the importance of reading, I wanted reading for pleasure to be ingrained in New Zealand culture, to be celebrated, encouraged, and to be made into that habit. I hope they get to see as much of the country as I have and even more, to do it their way, to find out what it is that they have that can bring joy, passion, knowledge, and drive this incredibly important, incredibly soul-filling role. And it's the little things I remember. I come to realise the important things. Here is a quote from some feedback we got from Clifton Terrace School, a school with the little girl who had written a book with her Labrador friend. I've heard back from parents whose kids came home buzzing, especially some of our neurodiverse students who were awestruck to meet someone whose brain works like mine. Reading advocacy is about creating ripples. Every conversation, every book recommendation, every visit to a school adds to the movement. And if we continue to recruit reading role models, to inspire kids to become role models themselves, then we are succeeding. Find out what they're passionate about in that moment of time and ensure they have access to reading material that reflects that. Read yourself, guilt-free. Let the kids see you reading. Chat to them about what you're reading. Be the role model and turn the children into reading role models for each other. The best thing we can do is create a culture where books are valued, shared and celebrated. My favourite author, Sir Terry Pratchett, wrote, "The library didn't only contain magical books, the ones that were chained to their shelves and very dangerous. It also contained perfectly ordinary books, printed on commonplace paper in mundane ink. It would be a mistake to think that these weren't also dangerous, just because reading them didn't make fireworks go off in the sky. Reading them sometimes did the more dangerous trick of making fireworks go off in the privacy of the reader's brain. Because every child deserves to find the book that sets off those fireworks. That book that they see themselves in, or the one that provides the doorway to escape for a while. So just remember, we're all stories in the end. So let's make it a good one, eh? Thank you all.